So I'm with Kids Drone Zone. I started Kids Drone Zone early on in 2015. And the reason I started Kids Drone Zone is because I recognized that the schools did not have the capacity or the budget to keep up with technology, right? That's a major factor. And so I decided to go ahead and start, well, I knew I wanted to do something with kids, but I didn't know what it was. So I came up with a hypothesis, and I spoke with the people at the Atlanta Maker Faire, and I said, I want to set up a drone technology pavilion. I said, I've never done this before. They said, go for it. And we ended up winning the blue ribbon for the entire event. Was blown away. We ran 1,076 kids through our pavilion. We probably missed about another 3,000 or 4,000 because the lines were just phenomenal. And so we've been trying to do something to expedite that with the kids. So what we have now invented is called STEAM, and our A is not arts, our A is for aviation. And my whole family's aviation. My daughter, Tiffany, she is an aviation architect at Hartsfield. She helped design the international terminal, and now she's getting ready to go over to Dubai to help to build an airport over there. And my son, Brandon, started flying at 13, graduated from the Air Force Academy, and now he is graduating in 2 weeks from his pilot training on heavies. So I'm really proud. So our whole family's aviation. They can't stand drones, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? But it's all good. So our mission is we actually love to serve the global community and exposing adults and youth to the world of drones and the good that drones do for mankind. So we are a Drones for Good organization. We focus a lot on safety when we're with our students. That is our main mantra. When you come to our technology pavilion, it is an education pavilion. So some of the kids are very impatient because we always have let the kids fly, but you have to go through the educational part first. So you have to go through rules and regulations and safety, then you have to go to the drone doctor, and then you get on the simulators, and then you get the eye candy, which is the flying, right? But they don't like that, but we always make sure we go over the safety regulations with them. So just to go over a couple of things with you, just a couple of STEM stats and why drones and eds are not in school, how we, us in this room, can help bridge that gap and come up with some solutions today. When I speak with parents, parents want their kids in STEM, but the schools don't have the budgets. A lot of the schools don't have the budgets, but the parents want it. As you can see, computer science is going to be the future. It's actually here now, but what I want you to know is the reason why we're concentrating on computer science is because the computers have wings on them now, and those wings are drones, right? So here you have an ambulance drone. How many people have seen the ambulance drone? And I'm so upset because the video won't play, and I wanted you guys to see that, but in a few short years, the ambulance drone is going to come, when you dial 911, it's going to come to your house. It's got audio and video. They're using it overseas. They're just not using it here because of the national airspace. And as we're talking to the kids, the reason we introduce these types of practical things to our students is because sometimes they can't connect the dots. But when you show them the ambulance drone and coming to the house and using those pads, they're like, huh? They start getting an understanding how powerful an impact drones are going to have on our society. We also go over drone careers with the students that we interchange with, and how we do that is we do a lot of outreach. We are heavy outreach. This year we've been in front of about 200,000 students. Next year we're slated to be in front of about 800,000. And we do that by traveling around the country and going to large events. And it used to be I would call up and ask. Now people are inviting us, so we're actually turning down a lot. We do after-school programs, and this year we just sold 3 franchises. When I got into this, I wasn't trying to do a franchise. I just wanted to teach kids how to build drones, code drones, and fly drones. So we start students grades 3 through 12 building drones, coding drones, and flying drones, because I think it's important for the students to understand how the drones work, and then from that perspective, then we can get into cinematography, 3D mapping, thermal, and all of that. But first, they have to learn how to build. So to understand that, they have to understand what's going on with careers. Okay, so we talked about budget constraints, and so the other thing is confidence in the teachers. When I've spoken with teachers, a lot of them feel like I just don't have the skill set to really teach anything about drones. You don't have to go as in-depth as we do and actually teach build, code, fly. And there are some other platforms out there that teachers can use, but most of the teachers I talk to are like, oh no, I just don't think I could do that. So what started happening, schools started having us to come in to train their STEM staff on this platform so that even if they're not build coding and flying, they can still do something with drones with the kids. So lack of skills is why a lot of schools don't have it. The connectivity to the real world. You won't believe how many teachers I've spoken with. They're like, oh, those drones are just a toy. I'm like, are you kidding me? And then I pull up my phone and I show them one of these videos and they're like, huh? So there's a lack of connectivity with the real world applications of drones in the education arena. They really don't understand why it is important for students to actually participate in drone education and understand that it's a very optimal career field. And parents want it, but they don't know where to get it because it's so few and far between in terms of our education system. It's very rare that you're going to see some type of drone education in the school system. You usually see something like at an event, and that's how we've gotten into a lot of the schools. They see us at an event, and they say, oh, I want this at my school. Speaking of real-world applications, when we're out with the students, we want them to understand what's going on with drones. I actually have seen this particular one and several by this organization called ProDrone. What happened to the audio?
By adding a phenomenal drone. 5-axis robotic arms.
How many people went to Interdrone? Have been to Interdrone?
20-kilogram max payload platform.
You gotta go.
The BD6B
awesome. I go to about 4 drone conventions a year.
ARM can work in high places, collect dangerous materials, and ship cargo to remote areas. The robot arms can carry a max load.
Of what they do there with this ProDrone and how more industrial applications are coming in terms of drones. And we want the students to know this so they can actually start doing what? Planning for their career field. And of course, drone racing. We always talk about drone racing with the kids because it really gets them excited. And we can go ahead and play this, please. We're only going to play about 10 seconds. And someone in the room tell me what the mistake the drone pilot made. It's not working? Okay, I don't understand what's going on with that. But so anyway, the mistake was he flipped over a gate. No, we don't want to play that one. And at the end of the day, last year, this young man, Luke Bannister, won $250,000, and he'd only been flying for 7 months. When I talk to parents about that, they're like, you need a drone today. And why am I doing that? Because I want the parents to get excited about their youth getting into the industry. And if that's one way of getting them in there, then let's do that. So we are starting to do more competitions with kids because we are realizing that's a different way of getting them in there. So we do build, code, fly, but some kids aren't excited about that. I have some kids that have engineering minds and they're like, I don't want to fly, I just want to fix it when it's broke. I'm like, what? Who wouldn't want to build it? So you have different types of mindsets. So we're actually expanding the program to do cinematography as well. So we know that computer science is going to be important. We know that drones are computers. They're really flying computers, right? And the thing that we're stressing with our students and our parents is that computer science is going to be the driver behind all of these drones, right? You're going to have a lot of software that's going to be the driver, and we want parents to understand that, and that's why we're trying to make that connectivity for them. So we do a lot of heavy community outreach. We have a lot of enrichment programs. We have a ton of strategic partners, and we start all kinds of various initiatives, and I'll talk about one that we're starting this Christmas. And this is kind of what it looks like when we have our kids, and everything from Barnes & Noble moving all their bookshelves and having us come in to do drones with the kids, to doing different type of outdoor events, to all of our strategic partners that we've done drones at Hartsville. And people are like, you did what? But because of the way we do it, they understand we're safe. The FAA invited us to come down to their Southeast Regional Center, and we did drones there. We have been invited so many times that every time we get a call, we're like, how did you find out about us? They're like, oh, so-and-so said you better have these people at your event. And so what we're trying to do is spread the word so we can encourage and share our knowledge with other people so that they can do the same thing. One of our new partners is Women in Aviation International, and now we travel with them to their national convention. We did Disney this year. And I said it before, we're slated to be in front of 800,000 for this coming year. And one of the programs that we started, because I wanted students to get really excited, is those students who are our top students, we created what is called a Drone Ambassador program. I have one young man that's out at Pace Academy today, and he did not actually go through our program. Our drone ambassadors go through our program, and they're our top builders. And we want them to go out in the community and also talk to their peers to understand and learn about drones. So when we are out, a lot of times you won't see me at the pavilion. I'm just sitting off to the side, and they're like, there are no adults here. I'm like, oh, they got it. They're good. But this one young man, he's not up here, his name is James. He didn't go through our program. You know what he did? He says, I said, well, you can't be an ambassador because you haven't built a drone. James went out on his own. He taught himself how to build a drone. He came out flying with us a couple of Sundays ago. He brought his drone. He said, see, I built this. See, I did it all on my own. And he took it apart and he put it back together. He says, can I be a drone ambassador? I said, well, you have to go through an interview process. So this weekend, he's auditioning to be a drone ambassador. So he's at Pace. He's at Maker Faire tomorrow. And we're going to be observing him. And then if he passes, then he will come on board. So what does that tell you? That young man was so motivated on his own by what he saw us doing that he wanted to do it because he saw our drone ambassadors at an event, right? So we love our drone ambassador programs, and we're also working on, I don't think he's pictured here, but Trent did over the summer last year, he did a internship with a drone manufacturing company up in Detroit. And at first the guy said no, and I just kept pestering him. I'm a pest, let me tell you. I'm like a little gnat. I'll just keep on until, and finally he was like, okay. And then afterwards he was like, send me more kids. So sometimes you just kind of have to twist their arm a little bit or just pester them until they say yes. That's our drone ambassadors in action. They're always standing there with the kids, teaching them about drones or every aspect. And what we do is we call them drone squads. So we try to start as many drone squads as possible. And our new initiative that we are starting this Christmas, and I want to thank Gary O'Neill, who's sitting here in the blue shirt back here. I said, Gary, I want to start a new initiative called Drones for Tots. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring the drones into the hospital because a lot of kids are in the hospital during the Christmas time. And I wanted to bring some type of special joy to them, also giving them drone education. Well, I started having these meetings, and lo and behold, we're going to be in there this Christmas. But the funny part is, I wanted to make sure we brought some FPVers with us because that's really cool. We have the virtual reality goggles on. And I told the guys when I went out to the field, I said, anybody who wants to do this, you have to interview with me. They're like, interview for what? We know how to fly. I said, no, you know how to fly outside. I need you to come to this hotel room. I need you to fly around. If you hit a lamp, you hit a wall, you're out. And they're like, what? I said, because you have to do precision flying. We have 0 incidents. We have 100% safety with Kids Drone Summit. So I can't have you flying around and getting caught up in his oxygen tank. That wouldn't be good. So we have this new initiative called Drones for Tots, and we're asking people to go to the website. And one of the things we want to do is when we leave, we want to leave them with a Drone Ambassador t-shirt. And what that does is when they get out of the hospital, they can go to any of our events for free because that t-shirt is their ticket. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Oh, is it? Okay. I could stand and talk about this slide all day long, but I don't think that's the information you want. My name's Trip Lowe. I am a professor here at the university in the School of Forestry and Natural Resources. Okay, there we go. Anyway, when people ask me what I do at the forestry school, I normally say, well, I play all day long. I get to play with gadgets and aircraft, and if you ask my wife, she'll just say, oh, he does Google Earth all day. So I think the truth is somewhere between playing with Google Earth is what I do. But I just put together several slides to show you some of the projects that we have used or some of our attempts to incorporate I have a hard time saying drone. I think I fell in that group that people wag their finger at you for saying drone. But I will use the word drone. A couple of examples of how we have attempted to use our drones. not to take a pretty picture or to make a video, but to convert this information or this data into actionable information. So you've spent the time, you've gone outside and you've safely flown, you've safely landed. Now what do you do with it? And I'm convinced the flying is easy. After a while, you'll learn what to do. You'll learn what not to do is probably even more important. But then, you notice your hard drive being filled up with 5 and 6 gig video files. What do you do with that? How do you send this information to people? How do land managers use these videos or these photos to address different problems, different issues that they're facing? So this first example is out at the Oconee Oconee Middle School complex in Watkinsville. And JC, I'm sure you have seen the same thing, but any chance you get to fly in front of kids, I had little kids knocking me over. I had to, say, I have a pair of yellow flight goggles, and when I put them on, I say, I am the pilot in command. Step back, respect my authority. But anyway, in this case, I went out and flew a little forested patch out beside the primary school. And the reason we did this, we had somebody call and say, you are the forestry school. We want to put in a walking trail. Can you help us? So they got in touch with me and said, well, we've looked on Google Earth. It's just the image on the right. And you can zoom in close and you can see fuzzy trees. You can zoom out and you can see little green patches. But you can't really see, you can't see detail. So I went out and flew, safely landed, processed the imagery, and sent them this orthophoto on the left. So now when you zoom in, you can see individual trees. I've highlighted one of the dead trees, big old dead tree. But that's what it looks like from above. And I point that out to people and they go, that's interesting. But now the school is able to design and plan and develop and redevelop the walking trails that they are hopefully putting in sometime soon. Let's see if I can, there we go. These are images from a flight at the Costa Rica, or the UGA campus down in Costa Rica. If you haven't been down to that campus, it's amazing. There are a lot of hills, but once you get over your version of walking uphill and then downhill, it's a great place to go. And this is a flight. I believe we were using a Phantom 4. And it ended up being, I think, a 5-battery mission. And the aircraft just, zigzagged back and forth and said, oh, my battery's going low. Came back, we changed it, and it zigzagged back and forth again. But this was, once we got all the data on the computer, processed it, and I started zooming in to some of the crowns. And it looks like they're growing big old heads of broccoli. I mean, the photo quality we were blown away with it. And I've highlighted this one area on top. It's a hole in the canopy. So the question to the class that is studying the ecology in this area is, what type of birds are going to use this? What animals are going to use that little opening in the canopy to do what they need to do, whatever that is? I pointed out down at the bottom, there's a landslide in the southern part of this image. And we were able to go on to Google Earth. Apparently, everybody goes hiking with the camera, takes a picture of things, and then uploads it to social media. In this case, it was Google Earth. But we were able to find this photo or this location on Google Earth, open up the image and go, well, that's, the photo on the UAV image. Well, that's what it looks like if you were standing out there. So the classroom opportunities for something as simple as, what in the world is that green thing? You can Google Earth. People post their photos and say, hey, I was here. Facebook, all of the other social medias allow you to upload photos. If those photos are geotagged, you can find a picture that you took like this and compare it to a picture that you take from above as a bird. And it is sometimes an eye-opening experience, because that bottom arrow is all the way down at the bottom of a very big hill. And so I looked at it, from the top and wondered what that was. But now I can, associate at least what this hiker saw with what I see on the photograph. We are the School of Forestry and Natural Resources. This is one of the forestry examples. One of the tasks in the life cycle of a pine stand is you cut the trees down, you prepare the site, you plant the trees, you let them grow, and then you cut them down again. That's the simplified approach. But one of those subtasks is, after we planted the trees, how many of those trees survived? So traditionally, you would ask the interns to drive out to the middle of nowhere, walk through this young pine stand, and insert seedling survival plots. These plots have a radius of maybe 11 feet, possibly a 100th acre plot. They establish the plot center, they establish the 11-foot radius, and then count the number of seedlings that are alive. Do that on multiple plots, combine the information, and determine how many trees survived. One of the things that the people on the ground check for is, well, if that seedling is dead, why did it die? Was it planted on a rock? Was it covered over by some bush? Did dirt fall on it? Was it planted improperly? Those types of questions that we can see with the boots on the ground, you're not going to see from the photograph. So an example of, I know the feeling. No, that's fine. So anyway, with the idea of doing a seedling survival count, yes, we can get. Yes, we can determine or estimate the number of seedlings that have survived, but no, we're probably not going to be able to say why that seedling died, or why this seedling looks like a big old red lollipop and this seedling looks like a skinny sucker that somebody's already been sucked on. So we're at the point now where we are trying to integrate this imagery into the foresters or the natural resource manager's workflow. So not what can we do to replace the forester, but how can we use this information to assist the forester in what they're doing. Now, one of the programs that we're associated with at Warnell is the Project Learning Tree. And I was thumbing through their website the other day, and they had this post or this quote at the top. Use the environment to engage children in learning both outside and indoors. And I thought that is a great description of how we can use these aircraft in a learning environment. So one of the activities that Project Learning Tree puts together is to determine how tall a tree is. So the way they do it, a team of students goes out and finds a tree. One student stands next to the tree real straight. The other student holds a ruler at arm's length and backs up until the bottom of that ruler is at the bottom of the tree and the top of the ruler is at the top of the tree. And now knowing how tall that one student is next to the tree, they can use proportions to find the height of the actual tree. Being a professor, I felt it necessary to include an equation. Equation, check. We are working through the different exercises they put out, and we are attempting to put a drone spin on these activities. And this is one example of figuring out how tall your tree is. This is a site in Costa Rica. Again, we have large trees that when you zoom in, they look like heads of broccoli. Really, really neat landscape. I flew this site. When we got back, I processed the imagery, and in addition to the ortho photo, we can generate a terrain model. So in the terrain model, the light blue area is the area lowest, or the dirt area on the ground. The bright pink area is the top of the tree. And we can see that that tree is 11.2 meters. So again, we are using this aircraft or this technology to address questions like, how tall is that tree? If that tree fell, or now that we know how tall that tree is, if this tree falls, which building is going to be affected, for instance. Now, getting back to somewhere in between playing and Google Earth, last spring I did teach a course in using drones in natural resource management activities. And I figured I would include a couple of things that did work. I found YouTube extremely valuable, as hard as it is for me to say that out loud as an educator. YouTube was a great source of information about Part 107. Software is always an issue. We are working in a computer lab that is a closed environment. So every time we restart the computers are reset. Software is reset. I found that a software called, it used to be called Autodesk Remake, but it's now Autodesk Recap, has an educational license. And the exercise we did with this, we went out to a wood pile. The forestry club cuts firewood. So I went out and videoed a large stump. I was able to chop that video up into steels, feed it into Autodesk Remake at the time, and generate a three-dimensional model of the stump. And it's, the point wasn't to wow them with the volume of the stump, but that was an exercise where the students got immediate gratification. They could sit there and watch the video, and then 20 minutes later, they have a three-dimensional model. They can rotate, they can fill with water, they can flip it sideways, and so on. But it was a good low-tech, instant gratification moment. If you are, I found a lot of the aircraft, a lot of the drone companies do provide excellent data sets. So if you don't have the aircraft, you can still work with the data in your lab. Okay? Things that worked somewhat. These are the most frustrating. You know if something works, and you know if something doesn't work. But the things that just kind of work, really, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out why or why not. We use Agisoft PhotoScan in our, or for the work I do. Pix4D is another one, and both of those offer an educational or a demo license. It seems when I was working through those, it would get you right up to the point where you are about to create data and do something, or create information and do something, and then it stops and says, oh, you need to buy the commercial license. So that was really frustrating. If you do need to generate maps, and again, you are on a school budget, there's some excellent open source, and don't be afraid by the word open source. There is a mapping software called QGIS. Has anybody in here had the pleasure of using QGIS? All right, so you've been out and flown a property with the class. What do you do with the imagery? Well, you make a map. It's the Dora Explorer line of lectures. Nobody? Did anybody in here grow up with? Okay, all right. But anyway, QGIS is an open source software, open source mapping software, and there's an installer called OSGEO4W, and that facilitates the installation. So if you are in if you do have a limited budget, that might be an approach. LAS tools, I don't know how much command line y'all are comfortable with, but LAS tools is an excellent, when you start getting into the generation of three-dimensional models and volumes and such. Now, the type of applications that we're working on, Warnell's goal is to integrate these aircraft, integrate the information from these aircraft into the different classes. So going back to the picture of the hole in the canopy, when that class is working on the ecology of that type of Costa Rica, we have a data set that they can pull up, look at. They can figure out how large the crowns are. Well, there we go. So, thank you for your attention.
I had a quick question. What sensors were you using to get the live sapling and the height data? Do you have special sensors on the drone for that?
The question was what sensors were what sensors did I use to generate the seedling survival imagery? That was a Phantom 3 Professional, just using the RGB, the camera that came with it. There are some. I played with the imagery a little bit, but that is the RGB combination.
Okay. And then for the height data, was that anything special, or just do you have like ground measurements that you overlay data onto your pictures?
The question was basically how did I generate those height measurements for the site in Costa Rica? It was interesting. That site was adjacent to a schoolyard, and the day I flew was the day they were coming back from vacation. Apparently, sometime recent, the government had put out a warning about bees flying into the area. So if you've heard one of the quadcopters flying above, it sounds like a swarm of bees. So I was out that morning flying, and I flew north, south, and east, west, and I took just a little bit of pleasure of watching everybody look up and duck for bees. But I did fly, I overflew that site. I flew north, south, and then east, west. Just we were in Costa Rica, and I didn't want to have to go back to recollect data. I did record control points. I believe I had 4 control points that I could see from the photos. Those control points were used or Agisoft PhotoScan uses those ground control points or in the triangulation of the photos. But the product, one is a photograph or an orthorectified photo. The other is a terrain model. So now you click on a pixel, and it's going to tell you, or it's going to give you an estimate of elevation above, in this case, and a height above ground.
What's been the biggest challenge with incorporating this into educational programming? I'm sure if you have to deal with some university stuff and JC getting the classrooms, getting access to students,
I would say the biggest challenge for me has been people in the education arena not understanding the need for it, because they still keep thinking it's a toy, and they don't understand the practical applications. And so I'm literally having to fight my way into some of these schools. And generally, I found that if I go to an event that they're doing, and then I'm interacting with the students, and then doing some type of an exercise, that's when the light bulb goes off. But because the educators are, they're clueless for the most part about what drones can do, that's been the challenge. Is the schools are like, oh, we don't need that, or some of them are afraid. Oh, what about the safety issue, right? So I have to show our safety plans and all of that, and that's our biggest challenge.
For me, the biggest challenge, it depends. And I take great pleasure in saying that facing y'all. It depends. It's one of my concerns is when can we fly? For instance, if I take a group of students out for class and fly, or let a student fly, it's my understanding that if that flight is for this educational event, that flight is a hobbyist flight. And what I would be required to fly under hobbyist rules. The point where my concern is, where's the point, where's the transition point? Where does it transition from a hobbyist flight to a non-hobbyist flight? So another example, let's say that I took a class out to fly a forest. Knowing that my professor friend is going to use this data in their research project. It's my understanding then that flight is a non-hobbyist flight, and I'm subject to the Part 107 regulations. And the decision rule is, does money change hands? Money in terms of reimbursement for mileage, money in terms of grants, money in terms of publications. So my concern is, what can I do? Allow me to decide how I'm going to do this safely, not, let me fly under the fear of, it. I don't like the gray area. I want to know what I can do and let me decide if I should do it or not. Okay, I would love to hear.
I need to talk to you, Gary.
Okay, it was my description. Is that sound?
Not necessarily that money has to change hands. It's for a commercial purpose. So if you're a hobbyist and you're taking pictures of yourself and for your own personal use, that's the hobby. If you're going to use it for any other purpose that has some sort of commercial or educational intent, then you've kind of crossed over to the 107. Independent of that, though, the way you operate under the rules that they've established, whether you call yourself a hobbyist or a Part 107 person, you should be doing the same thing in terms of safety and avoiding obstacles, applying to other people, and all of those things. So people tend to try to make that a big distinction, but the reality is they should pretty much overlap anyway, in terms of practical.
Right.
How I'm going to operate.
The issue for us isn't how we're going to operate, it's who's going to operate. Can this student fly? And of course, it'd be great for all of the students, and I'm looking forward to your students enrolling into Warnell already being certified. I mean, that's,
There are age restrictions.
Right.
But it would be great to have certified students enrolled, but we don't. And we're looking to build that pilot pool, but it's a slow process.
It is.
Have you considered developing education courses the other direction? In other words, instead of teaching natural resource managers how to fly, could you develop courses for those who fly to understand what they're looking at in natural resource management?
That's what we do.
We definitely do need to talk after this.
Sorry, now I'm getting distracted by something. So with up Part 107, I saw in your kind of curriculum that you use a portion of your course to try and teach that, and assuming like maybe remotepilot.com or like videos and stuff like that. Is one of the purposes actually to get them certified by the time, or just to have enough information that they know the difference between what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing?
Okay. In the course that I taught last spring, I did spend probably 6 weeks, maybe 7 weeks, covering the Part 107 regulations. Our goal, or my goal, wasn't to prepare them 100% to take the test. My goal was to introduce them to the things that I found personally confusing or difficult. So I hit the high points. I don't think 3 hours a week, for 6 or 7 weeks, I studied a lot more for the exam than that, and so I did cover the high points, but I did recommend to them several. If you are studying, I had several online training courses to study with, and I think that's an excellent way to study for the exam, not necessarily how to operate safely, but if your goal is to pass the exam.
I guess this is
So-
a question and comment for both you and Gary, but go ahead.
So in our program, we actually established this year for our high school students to actually start getting them ready so that by the time they graduate, they are certified. So they will take their Part 107, but not just that, because anybody can go take the Part 107, but you don't have a resume, right? Nobody's not gonna hire you. So within the realm of that, we actually make sure that they can fly in certain conditions, fly in certain areas. We've gotten permission from some private entities that will let us fly in construction sites and things like that for the kids when the construction site is dormant. There's no one there, right? And also they have to, when they graduate, they have to have at least 100 hours of flight hours under their belt so that they can have this resume that they can present to help them get employed, maybe doing a fireman or doing something else that will say, oh, this is an asset, right? Because how many people can walk in the door and say, I have this asset? So we're trying to make sure our students have assets, so when they graduate, they can go get a position someplace.
So the comment I would make for both Gary and Becky is about coming from the other direction. Can we teach pilots how to see, I'll say, any expertise? And I think that's an idea. It also could be a difficult idea. And so I'm coming from my perspective, which is heritage, historic preservation. I gave a little chat yesterday about it. There is a firm in New York City that they've been able, because they have both preservation specialists on staff and technology specialists that then were trained by the preservationists, knowing how to go up and look at certain building things, or going up into those tight spaces, interior, and like looking around and seeing what, or broadly looking at landscape. So one of the things I was gonna say is, if one of your questions is historic preservation, I wanna talk to you.
Okay, yeah, that's actually not on our radar. We've been concentrating on more of the quarries, construction sites, things like that. So we didn't, I didn't think about that, but that would be good for the students to actually get some training in
Yeah,
that.
and one of the difficulties, and I'm making a broad generalization trip about, at least in forestry, you don't have to really worry about too many people. Like, I wanna fly in downtown Athens. Yeah, right. That's what it's for buildings, officer conservation. So is it kind of difficult what sites you can and can't get
Right.
to when the actual issue might be in highly populated
Right.
areas?
Right.
Really, when is it ever 100% nobody's there?
Right.
Only when a natural disaster happens or something.
Right, right.
But I like the idea of coming from the pilot side. I can just see there being territorial crap that comes up.
Yes.
I'll just say that.
No,
I
Yeah.
absolutely
No
see.
wonder.
The way people think.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I'm from a high school. We actually have a drone program. We started it last year. We are producing 107 pilots. Last year we had 15, and 11 of our students passed the 107 test. My question is, where do I go after the 107 test? I mean, there's a bunch of different areas I can go into.
Right.
But where do I need to specialize? Because we are doing coding, we are doing the repair and engineering side of it. We're talking about 11 different industries that use it. We're going to be working with the Georgia Virtual History Project to look to doing some of the activities. But do I need to specialize? Do I need to give a broad area? It's kind of open after the 107 test where I need to go after.
Well, I don't think you need to specialize, because that would kind of close the doors for some people's ideas and where they think. But what I would suggest, and I did this with my students, what do you guys want to do? What are some of the things that you guys are interested in? Who cares what I think? What do you think? Because me thinking was just doing Bill Code Fly, and people are like, we don't want to keep doing that. So talking to the students and understanding from their perspective what their interests are. Some of them could be nature lovers, some of them could be engineering lovers, some of them could be just photography. So depending on what they want, then you tailor it. So that's what we do. We tailor it to the students and what they want to do. Yes?
Continuing education. I took my 107 certification, I got all that done, and now, I want more. I've talked to a couple of friends who are pilots, and they said that the FAA has programs that they attend, the pilots attend, it's kind of get to know the FAA, it's a good thing that the pilots, work closely with them. And is there anything like that with continuing education with drones as far as, I think they used to call them fly-ins or something, where people would get together?
Yeah, now we have a fly-in. I started this is funny. So I have the youth, and we've been doing it for a few years now. But the other side of the coin is the parents and the adults that would come. How come you're only doing this for adults? This is ridiculous. And I was like, because that's what I was interested in. But I got so much flack from the adults that 2 months ago, I started a flying group, and we're now up to 200 and something in Atlanta. And these are not FPVers. These are people with Mavericks and Phantoms and Inspire 2s and, some of the more professional ones. And now as we've come together, as you've said, now they're coming to me like, we want classes on this and we want classes on that. I was like, that was the purpose of this. So your point is very valid. And so maybe Gary, can I see Gary's, so maybe Gary can.
Probably initiate.
Okay, cool.
Something, you're right, this whole world is exploding.
It is.
Happening very fast, and there are a lot of people like AUVSI that are looking for how do we help? And you've just given me two great ideas, so.
Right.
We will jump on that like a kid will.
Because you're not the only one. I have over 200 adults now that are looking at me like I'm supposed to develop something. And I was like,
Flight logs as well, that was the first thing, I've got two
yeah,
apps.
how do you do that,
I use Air
right?
Maps, I use an app called Hover, and so just trying to find a logbook for your flights.
Right.
Any other questions? Yes.
For Casey,
Yes.
I guess a few different questions. What age group do you work with?
3rd grade to 12th grade. And let me tell you guys something. Those elementary kids, we have Drone Olympics every year. And, no, I don't think you were there. You weren't there last year. I think it was I was the other guy. Matt and some of his people were out there. Let me tell you something. Those 3rd through 5th graders blew those high schoolers away. And I was like, we were doing Jeopardy, Drone Jeopardy. They were like, I was like, I didn't finish asking the question. We know the answer. So people really are putting these shackles on our youth's minds, because when I lived in Germany for 8 years, by middle school, those kids are deciding if they want to be a dentist, if they want to do this, and we're still talking to our kids about, do you want chocolate ice cream, or do you want? And those kids are thinking about, I think I want to be a phlebotomist, So and it was the schools who said, we want you to come in here in the elementary school, and I was like, so I had to develop different safety protocols and things like that to go into the elementary school.
So that's kind of the second part of my question. Is how do you, with younger kids especially, how do you deal with the chaos that can be drones plus kids?
You know what we did?
Numbers of kids.
I start putting them in charge. So we develop a NASCAR sense. You're the pit manager, you're the battery manager, and if you see somebody's not managing those, hey, excuse me, I need to talk to you, come over here, but what are you supposed to be doing? Not me saying that. The kids, after they're trained to be the battery manager, they're like, no, so-and-so, that is not how you hook the battery. That is a cold table, you're supposed to be on the hot table, that type of thing. So by putting them in charge, boy, they were taking over. And let me say this, I think there was a picture up there, only have like 3 girls in my program, really trying to find more girls. But we did the Delta Flight Museum with the Women in Aviation, and those girls went in there and they took control, and they were like, everything's set up, so this is how we're gonna do it, guys. And I went and stood in the corner, and they were in the 3rd grade, and I was like, okay. You got this. We really do need to take the limitations off that we have on our youth's minds. Their minds are so exceptional. And by putting them in charge, and if you think they can't, but I'm promising you, they can. And they make mistakes, and I might have to have a sidebar and say, well, that wasn't quite right, so we need to do a little bit more training, and now I don't do it in front of the other kids, but I want you to go back and retrain so-and-so because you were saying something that really wasn't quite right. So let the kids lead. Teach them to be the leaders. Yes?
The kids are building their drones.
So we go through a process. Our first process is called scratch and build only. So I bring a box in at the beginning of the year. It can have anything in it, from popsicle sticks to CDs to whatever. And I'm like, you need to build a drone out of that. They're like, there's no way. I'm like, you need to sit down. You get the engineering process. We discuss it, what that looks like. As a group, they sit down and each person actually envisions what they think it looks like. And then as a group, they have to come to a consensus as a team to decide, I think this is better because of this. And you can't just say, I think it's better. You have to give why. That shows me that you have some thinking skills, right? You can't just say, well, I like mine better. No, you can't say that. If you don't, then the group dismisses you. You have to give a reason why. And then after they go through their scratch and build, then the next drone we build, we actually sit down and discuss. Do you want to build a racing drone? Do you want to build a hexacopter? Do you want to build? And then based on that, then they can build. But one of the things that we do on the scratch and build side is when they're building their frame, before they can put any components on there, we do what I call the wall test, and we throw it up against the wall, and then each person only has 2 minutes to put that drone back together. And every person on the team has to do it, because if you don't do that, then somebody on the team is probably just, not paying attention, not really doing anything. So we try not to have no more than 7 students on a team, because if you have 10, that's not enough for all 10 of them to do. Now, I promise you, this has been through trial and error. I didn't come out the womb thinking like this, right? Because there was no such thing as a youth program, and through trial and error, I've learned, oh, don't do that. That person's over there, they're not doing anything, they're getting bored, and letting them teach. So I will email them the week before and say, okay, so-and-so, you're gonna teach about commercial drones in the oil and gas. Oh, I am? Yep. Why do I need to teach that? Because that gets them more excited. So every student does research projects in the program. And some of the students, the ones that don't like to write, their parents are like, oh my God, that's all he talks about is those darn drones. Because when kids are excited about something, regardless of whether they don't like to write, now they want to write because they want to learn more about this drone. Yeah.
I want to ask, is there a certain type of flight controller that you use in your?
Well, we use everything from so in our fleet, we have 110 drones. We have 2 Inspires, and we have 2 Phantoms, and we're getting a Maverick. But everything else is everything from a tiny Whoop to a SEMA to so we have various flight controllers. So I don't want the students to get, oh, I have to have this flight controller. I want them to know, do you know how to work the flight controller? So we don't say you have to use that one or this one. We just want to make sure they have the cognitive skills to understand how to work the controller. Any other questions?
Throw one last one at you. Drone operation, is it a means or an end? Is it something that you do to get to something else, or is it the thing you do?
From my perspective, drone operations is something you do to get a result. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what we're using drones for. We're using drones to operations so that we can get the results, to gather data so that we can interpret the data so we can make the data valuable for who? Our clients. And that's the perspective that I'm teaching my students. Yes, this is fun, but at the end of the day, the students that are in middle school, they're already getting into 3D mapping and photogrammetry and how to stitch them. And I'm like, this is why, because if you're going to do this, this is what is expected of you in the marketplace.
It's definitely for us only one part of the workflow. And I prefer to start at the very end. What do you want? What client, what do you need? And then work back. Okay, we can incorporate drones into this aspect, but we still have to go out into the woods and measure that.
Right.
So it's for us, it's a part of the whole process.
And that's fine.
Well, I enjoyed this, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.